Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, Lavkushi, please start my video. My video has been switched off. And hello, everyone. We would start in a few minutes as the honorary guests join. Honorable Ashurani ji and Provost Bhuta, as they join. We'll start in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Hello?
Hello?
Good morning.
Yeah, we would be starting soon. Thanks for your patience. especially those who are not on Zoom, so can't see, or may be able to see. I do not know.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening. Namaskar.
नमस्कार सर.
Namaskar.
और सर कैसे हैं?
Bas bahut badhiya. So let's just see as they join. We'll start soon.
Okay,
Thank you. Sorry again, everyone. We are waiting for Vice Chancellor Usha Rani ji and Provost to start soon.
Good morning, Dr. Rustagi. I'm on.
Oh, good morning, Provost Vura. How are you? Thanks for joining in this morning. Please give us a few more minutes, Dr. Buddha, as the VC joins.
Sure.
Let me call Professor Lavkush and see.
We should start our, you can go ahead, you can introduce Professor Bhimrao sir and invite the speaker. Within 10 minutes, sir, we will start. Yeah, we can start. Very good morning to all the delegates joining from USA, and good evening to all the delegates who have joined us from India. And Anwar sir, what's the time in your very good morning? Okay. So I request Professor Rustagi sir, you are on mute, Professor Rustagi sir. Professor Rustagi sir, please unmute yourself.
Okay.
And
All right.
introduce about this workshop, international workshop, and you can invite the speaker. I welcome on behalf of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University all the delegates, Professor Bhutta, Professor Anurag sir, and Professor Rustagi sir, and other respected delegates. We have a speaker with us, Professor Sona Dixit, here in this premises. So, Vice Chancellor, she is stuck in traffic. She may take some more time. So, meanwhile, we can start this workshop. So, I request Professor Rustagi sir to please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Mishra. Professor Bhutto, welcome to the workshop, and we thank you for taking the time to join us. We know it's early morning. So for the purpose of the workshop, Professor Bhutto, the collaboration with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University started in year 2016 when we took a group of students to visit Taj Mahal, which is in city of Agra, where Professor Lavkush's university is located. Over time, I request everyone who's not speaking to please mute your mic. Since that time, Professor Bhutta, we have jointly hosted several conferences, almost every year. Over time, we observed that several articles submitted to journals of the International Academy of Business, through which we were jointly hosting the conference, were not at the level where we would have wanted. They needed improvement. Several individuals suggested that we do a workshop on preparing articles that are suitable for publication in international journals, as well as for us to make suggestions on best way to present their research at the conference. I also observed the same in terms of term papers submitted to my classes. In fact, 4 or 5 years ago, I had requested a colleague teaching business communications to talk about preparing quality term papers for my classes. Professor Okoro in business communications in our school, he had also made presentation last year. So in, around the conference, and based on that response, we decided to do it again this year and promoted it more. In fact, it was originally scheduled for last month when we had planned to invite students as well. However, due to logistical issues, it had to be moved to this month. To our surprise, promoting worked and over 600 individuals have registered for this workshop, and most of them are faculty members at Indian institutions. Provost Wuta is hello?
Yes, I'm here, Dr.
Yeah, Dr. Anthony Wuta is provost at Howard University and has played various roles at the university, including Dean of the College of Pharmacy and Assistant Provost for International Programs. Dr. Wuta has served as Director for the Center for Minority Health Services Research and the Center of Excellence. Dr. Wuta has received over Can you please mute those who are speaking and not supposed to be speaking? Can you please do that? Dr. Wuta has received over $50 million in grant funding from several sources, including NIH, CDC, USAID, HRSA, AHRQ, and foundations. And he has published numerous research articles on HIV, medication adherence, disease state management, and various other topics in respected journals. Dr. Wuta has led and participated in various international programs, including sponsored projects in Nigeria, South Africa, Zambia, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Ghana, etc. His other interests and expertise include minority access to novel medical therapies, medication compliance, post-marketing assessment, clinical trial protocol and evaluation, survival analysis, and the role of stress in the functioning of healthcare professionals. With that, I invite Professor Wuta to give some remarks as we start the conference. So thanks, Professor Wuta.
Thank you, Dr. Rustagi, for that kind introduction. And thank you as well for organizing this very important international workshop. As Dr. Rustagi had introduced, I'm Anthony Wuta, and I currently serve as the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Howard University. And it is certainly my pleasure to welcome each of you this evening or this morning, wherever you may be. As Dr. Rustagi mentioned, I'm a pharmacist by profession and a pharmacoepidemiologist, HIV researcher. And so as an academic, I'm certainly aware of the importance of publication, of us conducting research and activities and sharing that knowledge with colleagues all over the world so that we can help to advance our individual disciplines and make an impact in the communities that we serve. And so I'm certainly supportive of this activity. And as we continue to expand internationally and support collaborations and partnerships with colleagues all over the world, Dr. Rustagi has been one of the leaders in conducting partnerships and collaborative international programs and projects. And we certainly want to continue to support that effort. And so welcome again to each of you. I hope that this is a meaningful and productive workshop, and that it will continue to further our partnerships and collaborations with India and with other institutions around the world. And so thank you again and welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhuta. With that, I would request Professor Anandi Sahu to start his presentation on preparing a paper for a journal, strengthening acceptability and avoiding pitfalls. Thanks, Dr. Sahu.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. If you are Narendra, then means others are able to hear me. Are you?
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to present this paper, which is introductory in its intent. But the idea is, as Narendra mentioned a while back, that
welcome, Professor Sahu, sir. It's my pleasure to present this paper, which is introductory in its intent. But the idea is,
Dr. Lavkush, can you request whoever is managing the technology to mute everyone except Professor Sahu?
should I continue?
Yeah, please continue.
Okay. So one of the important aspects often overlooked is when a paper is submitted to a journal and is not in good form. And that obviously sometimes is distracting from it being properly considered for the journal. So this presentation basically goes into various aspects of what is important in making a paper look acceptable and avoid pitfalls. So this was done between Professor Rustagi and me, and then we are presenting it. So it's not providing empirical evidence per se, but it goes through all the aspects of nitty-gritty, and then it is going to be followed up by more substantive ideas regarding empirical research, etc., by Professor Anuru. So as I have to. So to summarize the workshop, it is in two parts. The first part discusses basically style and substance, starting with the title of the paper to references and appendixes. So basically we take from A to Z and address all of them, but we keeping the amount of time at disposal, we try not to get too detailed into each one of them, but we cover necessarily all the important aspects. So in a summary view, the central idea is to increase the probability of acceptance and avoid obvious pitfalls. So have nothing distracting in the paper that keeps it from being considered. The ultimate acceptance depends on the contribution made, not merely on having a flawlessly written paper, but it helps. So having a well-done paper that looks good, doesn't have distracting features, those kinds of things are very helpful we have found that often people pay little attention to even their title and references, which are important in papers. So before you start modifying your paper the way you have written, it is important that look at the target journal. Where are you submitting your paper? And it is worthwhile to download a paper which looks similar in complexity to you. So carefully go and see that the papers that are being published in that journal what kind of requirements do they have? Does it have a requirement regarding length of the paper? So if the journal does not accept more than 12 pages of 12 published pages, and you have 36 pages of long paper, then it's likely going to be not seen positively. So you want to target that thing. Want to see if the journal has a requirement regarding font size, font type. Does it differ for abstract as opposed to the rest of the papers? Abstract maybe have a different font size. Usually the title has a different font size. Abstract has a different one. Main paper has a different font size. So all of those you have to notice. Then we are used to just putting footnotes, but many journals don't use footnotes anymore. They use endnotes. You want to notice if the journal prefers a footnote or endnote. So just looking at the target journals and see what that journal prefers in terms of style. Carefully notice that if the journal follows a particular style in other studies that are cited in papers published, requires you to submit in specified margins. So if the paper is asking you to leave a 1-inch margin on all sides, you want to do that. So those are very simple things to do, but they can be distracting for the journal. Does it require you to be single space or double space? That's important in this thing. So often spacing becomes an issue. So it's a great idea to download or print a paper from the journal that has complexity similar to the paper that you are trying to submit, and use that downloaded paper as a model in modifying your paper. Now I will go through each one of those various little components, but that's the general idea that you do want to look at your target journal, their style, their requirements before you start out making your own modifications. So once we are done with looking at the journal and its title, I would go ahead and remark on several aspects of a paper. First, the title. The title and author names. So it seems simple, but often a title itself has a few complexities. So title may be in all caps or in maybe regular case, but often it is in all caps. The font size is often different, larger. In our case, the journal that we are published through International Academy of Business has a 16 font size, and it is bold and center. You want title not to exceed 3 lines, even if they don't tell you so, because to have title that exceeds into multiple lines is very distracting and says that we are not able to summarize our views in a succinct manner. Author names often follow right below the missed the page. Author names are follow right below. Usually you have a line, blank line in between, and author's name should be followed by affiliations, centered and space. I have an example on the following page in a minute. And author names are usually in italics and bold, but you want to have a look at this. The font size for author names are separate, which is usually lower. And in our case, it is 12-point font, single space. So I would just go to an example and show it and come back to the previous slide to show. So you can see over here in an example, there's a title very neatly organized in the middle, does not exceed 3 lines. Then you see author names and followed by their affiliations. And then we go and have a a blank line and then goes abstract. And abstract, I would go back and talk about it in a minute, and abstract followed by keyword and then the main paper. So I'll take you back to the place we had left. So you have the title and author names. Once you are done with title and author names, then the question is of abstract and keywords. So abstracts are usually in a lower font. Sometimes you would see that it will be 12 font, sometimes it is 10-point font. In our case, the abstract is in 10-point font. You have a title, which is italicized, abstract title that is, and the text of the abstract is indented half an inch from other side. So the abstract stands out. And you cannot have the abstract which is too long. Usually 100 to 150 words is preferred. If you are closer to 100 words, that is preferable. But exceeding 150 words becomes abstract that is considered too long. So as you could see that this abstract, it neatly fits into like a paragraph and followed by keywords. Now the keywords are important because they take the important aspects of your paper and put down. So what is that paper about? So I will go back to the example that I have used. So this paper is on social capital, supply chain and integration, etc. So the keyword has used social capital, supply chain, customer loyalty, performance, retail industry. And what that is doing, that if somebody is searching for research or a topic, then that abstract, which has these keywords, show up in those searches. So your research later become more productive to the academic community than if you did not have an keywords that were all highlighted in that manner. Once we got the author names, title, abstract, and keywords, we done with some basic ideas about how the paper starts out. The important is the abstract should not be the same width as the rest of the paper, so it is half an inch indented from both sides, so it stands out from the rest of the paper. Then you start the main body of the paper, and main body of the paper, you're submitting a paper. Good idea is to use submit the paper in 8.5 by 11 font. And I know that in India, legal size paper is often used, which has a length which is longer than 11 inches. Even if you are printing a paper on papers like that, it is good idea to have the paper you are submitting on 8.5 by 11, because that is pretty much standard at this time in most places. Margin should be at 1 inch from the top, bottom, left and right. So that way, paper is not spilling over to the edges. Page number should be centered at the bottom of each page. All headings should be 12-point bold font, major subheadings, and centered and capitalized. So major headings are often capitalized. When you use the second level headings, they are simply in bold and regular case. And each heading is preceded and followed by a blank line. So I would go back to the previous example I gave you. Like this is a heading which says introduction. It is before introduction, there's a blank line. After introduction, that is a blank line. This is in cap, bold. The next level would be regular. It will be essentially start at the paragraph above the paragraph, and it will be bold and capitalized, but not in bold and bolded, and in regular case not capped, not in caps. So once you make sure that your headings and subheadings, The third level headings are usually run with the paragraph, so that you don't separate that out. The third level headings is simply uses italicized bold letters, but it doesn't separate it out. You just put that and you put a period. So that third level headings is what I have on this particular slide. The third level headings should be italicized, 12-point bold, left justified, should utilize the title case, and you put a period after that. So it says to the reader that it is a lower level heading, but at the same time, you are not taking space by putting space before and after, and it will make it confusing because the style tells you which is the main segment, which is the sub-segment, which is the sub-sub-segment, and that's important. Often people underline words. Often it is better to use italics than to underline. And main body of the paper is followed by endnotes, references, and appendixes, and in that order. So now, whether you should use endnotes or footnotes, that's important to look at the journal. Many journals now prefer endnotes rather than footnotes. Endnotes are what you put at the end of the paper before you put references and others. And footnotes are on the page where the reference comes, you put a number and then there's a footnote. So you have to look at the journal and see whether they like endnotes or footnotes. Appendixes should be placed at the very end of the manuscript. So any appendix that you is say methodology piece or some other aspect that you were drawing attention to that was being cited, those appendixes should come at the very end of the paper. Any references are come right after the paper before you have the appendixes. So endnotes, after endnotes, you have references, and after references, you have appendixes in that order. All mathematical notations and equations, where possible, if you are trying not to mix those notations in running sentences, but if you have to use notations and they blend in properly, you can do that. It is better to separate equations in the middle, and all equations should be numbered. All the notations and symbols that you are using must be explained as to what they stand for. So say, for example, we use mu for mean, but to assume that mu for mean is, instead of doing that, it is better to say that mu stands for such and such things, sigma stands for such and such things. That's very important. Equation numbers should be in parentheses, flush with the right-hand side margin. So all equations that you're putting in should be numbered and should be in between paragraph where things are where the equation belongs, but you are providing space from above and below so that the equation can be separated from the rest of the writing. Tables and figures. All tables and figures incorporated in the body of the text. It should not spill over onto the margin. They should be placed as close as possible to the location in the text where they are first referenced. Number all tables, figures, so they should all be numbered. So at the very top, it says table number such and such. So you say, here is the example. It says table number 3. It is in bold, capital letters. This is what we use. If there's a variation in the journal that you are submitting to, then you want to change that. If this change you did not make before submitting to that journal, then paper is unlikely to be rejected for that reason, because they may be using a title case rather than using all caps. All tables and figures should have their names right under. So you say table number 3, and then the name of the table comes in. Similarly, you have a figure number and name of the figure. If you have a source, the source should be at the bottom, and that source, any information that you are using, if it is author's calculations, etc., you want to put the source at the bottom of the table. Center each table or figure and its title. So they are all centered in the middle of the page, and they should not be spilling over to the sides. In other words, onto the margins. References. And references are important because often people make tons of mistakes. Reference styles differ. And as I mentioned before, that after endnotes, references show up, and appendixes, if you have, not all papers have appendixes, it's good to not to include appendixes. They increase the size of the paper. But if you have to have, then they come at the very last. References should include only those studies that have actually been cited in the paper. So you just because you reference those papers, you don't want to put them in the paper. But if you have cited that paper and used that paper, then you have to have that in the reference. And that is also within the body of the paper. They say such and such year. The second and additional line of each reference should have a half indentation. So I would actually go back and show you the reference, so it will make a better sense. So references here says in all caps, goes and gives name. You can see it is followed by the year in which that article was published, provides name of the paper, and a journal name. The journal name is usually italicized. At one time when we did not have this technology, it used to be underlined, but the journal names are now italicized. These numbers that you are seeing, this is volume number, and in the parenthesis is the number. So the volume is usually the year, and that's the number, and then the page numbers. If you have downloaded from some source, you want to mention that. But that if you have all in alphabetical order, these references neatly put like that, that's very pleasing to journals, because often when they look at the reference, go back, look at the paper, see a reference, go back to the references, and they cannot find the proper citations, that is very disappointing. So it's very important that your references are consistent with the journal paper that you are submitting, and they are in, they provide the full information. Do not leave blank lines between references. This is what we use. It is possible that a journal that you are submitting has a blank line between two two citations. So you want to look for that. But usually journals now skip out a line, and basically indentation serves as a way to separate one reference, one citation from the other. Title of journals and books should be italicized, as I mentioned, rather than underlined. References should follow American Psychological Association references guides. That's what many follow, but it's best to have a look at what the journal, the particular journal you are using. They often modify the APA reference guidelines somewhat to suit their needs or to make it somewhat more efficient. So you want to go and look at the journal style. But what I provided as an example is usually and often to a non-academic some of these won't make sense, like 24:4 here at this point where I have where my cursor is telling you 24:4, and only an academic will understand this is volume 4 and number 4, and those are the page numbers. They don't have to be said because that's a standard a technique for that. Now, I would go, and these were all about style. It started with the title of the paper and went all the way to references and appendixes. Now, I want to say a few things about substance, and this will also be, you'll be happy, this will be the last page of the PowerPoint. So finally, the substance. Your paper should summarize your study and attract the reader. So when you are thinking about the title of the paper, put a title, not a long winding title, but title that adequately says what your paper is about. Title should be in a way summary, but sometimes it is not possible. You do the best you can, but that's what you are aiming for, that your title says, attracts a possible reader, and that means also the people who are referees for the paper. Your literature review should clearly establish place and importance of your study. So you don't just go and say, okay, all these studies you looked at, but how they relate to your paper. It's important to put those studies in that context. Your conclusion should reiterate the importance of your study, that you say this is the kind of contribution your paper has made. I've not been. You want to go and point out how your paper adds, replaces, or improves previous studies. So you want to make distinction between your study and the studies that you have cited, those that have preceded you. Are there any deficiencies left in your study, and explain those reasons? So it's a good idea to go and tell as to that you've studied for this particular period because data were available, and your future study is going to expand it to such and such things. It's all right to go and say if they are, what you are doing and what you are not doing, for example, and there may be a good reason for that. Explain how significant your contributions are, and that, in the conclusions, as well as in your abstract, those things being put, those are the first things any journal tends to look at before they go and look at your whole paper. So this completes my presentation, and I will give your control back to Professor Rustagi. Narendra, you are still there?
I think he's on mute.
So
sorry, I was on mute.
no problem at all. So I completed the paper.
I see that. Thanks again. Dr. Sahu, thanks a lot for a great presentation. One sec. One second. Let me mute myself. Vice Chancellor Ashurani ji has joined, so I'll stop sharing and give the screen, a podium to Professor Lavkush Mishra. So we'll go from there.
Thank you, Professor.
Vice Chancellor Ashurani ji has joined, so I'll stop sharing
and give the screen, podium to Professor Dr. Mishra.
Thank you, sir. Professor Rustagi, sir. I would like to introduce our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashurani. Madam, she is with us. She was caught in traffic, that's why she got some little late. And I apologize on behalf of the university for that.
Professor Mishra, there seems to be a lagged, play of the sound. So I don't know if you can switch off the YouTube, sound in your room.
Your voice is not clear, sir.
Professor Mishra, there seems to be a lagged, play of the sound. So I don't know if you can.
Yeah. Now we are able to listen you.
Sound.
Professor Mishra, start on your end.
Thank you, sir. Sorry for the disturbances. Technical some disturbances was there. Professor Ashurani, madam, she is the Honorable Vice Chancellor of this historical university, which was established even before our independence. It was established in 1927, and we got independence in 1947. So 20 years back to our independence, this university was established, and we are glad to introduce our Vice Chancellor on this occasion of international workshop on this research. Yeah. So I request he is basically chemist, a renowned academician in field of chemistry. She has published a number of books and research papers in international and national journals. So I request Professor Ashurani, madam, to address the participants.
Yeah, very good evening to each and everyone who is attached to this workshop. This is a very important topic, and I think when we are following so many things and just promoting research, we are doing a lot of research, but we don't understand and know that how to publish your work into a reputed journal or a patent journal. Then that becomes a very important point for the students. Whatever they are doing, whatever research they are doing, that should be published. And sometimes students feel that their research is very good, but they are not able to publish it, or their papers are rejected in good journals. So I think the experts like Ananditi Sahu, who has already given you how to write a paper, especially title, how to write title, what it should contain, how to write abstract, and how we can write a good research paper, references, and other things. But one thing I would like to tell, when we talk about different subjects and we choose a journal in which our paper can be published, we should first see what is the thrust area of that journal. If you know the thrust areas of that journal or what are the important aspects our content is having, our research is having, then only we should submit our paper. Sometimes here, the thrust areas of our research is not matching with the aims and objectives and the areas in which that journal is publishing. So that becomes a cause of rejection. So to write a good paper, first we should understand what is the requirement of that journal in which we wish to publish. Then we should read carefully all the instructions given for the authors. I think the instructions given in authors guidelines or the guidelines for authors, even in any good journal, I think everything is very clearly written that what size is required, which kind of abbreviations are required, which kind of language is required. And I think we can just take up the help of some softwares like LaTeX and other. If we are having a publication writing skill, something we need help. One more important point I would like to raise that now many good journals are having facility of improving your papers. That is on paid basis. So we lose some money on just correcting our papers. Such workshops are very important, and I think the students should take care of each and every point taught by the experts during this workshop or anytime others, so that we can improve our paper without spending any money. So wish you all the best, and I think it's a very great opportunity for both the universities to just organize together under the MOU with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University and Harvard University. And I'll be very happy if we can, not virtually, but we can sometimes organize this here. This will be promoting more and more and encouraging our students. I wish all the best to this organizers of this workshop and hope that in future many more such topics will be organized. These topics will be taken care into such workshops. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Ashurani ji. Really good to hear, and you emphasize the topics that we are trying to highlight. So thank you again. And really good to hear. Yeah, sorry about the lag, but for participants, I just wanted to show you something that this was an article I wrote on cheating and plagiarism in higher education. I submitted it in 2010. And to my surprise, it has over 6,500 reads of the paper. So as Professor Sahu pointed out, the title is important, and obviously the issue is important. And, we can always collaborate more on such issues. And if you have an interest, you can reach out to me or us and we can talk more. But you can pick a topic which is in demand, and then you see it being quoted, all over. So that is something I wanted to bring out as well. With this, I would invite Mr. J.J. Gonzalez to make his brief presentation that would be followed by the presentation by Professor Onuro about analysis. So with that, Mr. Gonzalez, and I'll stop sharing. Mr. Gonzalez, are you there? Yeah, we can hear you now.
Professor Rustagi sir, may I take some time?
Oh, sure, please.
Professor Rustagi, am I audible?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay. So our university, sir, this is matter of great pleasure that we had been in collaboration for last 7 to 8 years. If I remember, this was 2016 when we organized one joint conference at Agra.
Yeah.
And after that, we had been continuously organizing various workshops, seminars, conferences, and we conducted some research also. So this is the international cooperation, especially in the management field, and this is the true global education, which is being realized and imparted by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra, as well as Howard University, USA. And this is the great efforts of Professor Narendra K. Rustagi, sir. So we are highly obliged to you for sharing your knowledge and sharing knowledge with the other delegates on global level. And definitely it is also credit going to Dr. Anthony K. Butosa and other Professor Andrew Saab. He is the president of International Academy of Business, and of course Professor Anandi P. Sahusa. So our university, we are, as you know, that we are celebrating, our country is celebrating 75 or 50 year of independence. And nowadays in our country, we are also hosting G20 summit as a president of the G20 group. So on this occasion, we have decided, our university has decided to honor reputed people, those who are imparting education on global level, especially for global community, without beyond boundaries. So in that context, I request Professor our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashurani Madam, to present Guru Vasisht Samman 2023. It is being given to Dr. Anthony K. Butosa. He is the Provost and Chief Academic Officer, Howard University, Washington, D.C., USA. So this is a token of honor, symbolic honor, and in continuance of that, I would like to introduce Guru Vasisht. He was the teacher, Guru of Lord Ram. And nowadays, you know, the Ram temple of our country is on its height, and it will be open to public in 2024, January. So this is a great honor after the name of great Guru, who was the Guru of our Lord Ram. So another recipient of this Guru Vasisht Award Samman is Dr. Aminul Anuruo. He is the professor in Coppin State University, USA. And we have been interacting academically on different forums, and we have been exchanging our ideas and thoughts and the research findings. So I request Professor Ashurani Madam to present Guru Vasisht Samman to Professor Anuruo sir. Professor Anuruo sir.
Yes, thank you.
This is an honor for you.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. So.
And continue with the Guru Vasisht Samman. Of course, our next recipient is Dr. Anandi P. Sahu. He is the professor of economics in Auckland University, USA. He was kind enough to join us in December in an international conference, which was organized in a hybrid mode in Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra, in association with the Harvard University. He traveled to this part of our country. He traveled to Agra from US to attend that conference. And time to time, he has been our speaker and enlightening the students and the researchers in different seminar conferences and workshops. As you see today, this workshop was organized to enlighten those students, those participants, especially the research scholars, those who presented paper in international conference that were held in 16th, 17th and 18th of December 2022, but their quality was not up to the mark. So that's why Harvard University, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra, as well as International Academy of Business, planned to teach the students, train them how to write good research paper for publication in international conference, journals. So he has been our speaker. So congratulate Dr. Ananditi Sahu on this occasion, and I request Professor Ashurani Madam to present Guru Vasist Samman to Professor Sati Sahu. And the key person who is man behind all these things, who put all the flowers into bunches academically, that causes exchange of ideas, exchange of views, findings, research techniques, and other things. It is none other than Professor Narendra K. Rustagi sir. He is the Director, Center for Global Business Studies, Harvard University, Washington, D.C. We organized first conference in 2016, and students exchange program was there. Professor Rustagi sir came with some students, management students from USA. They visited our university as well as our city. And since then, this we are continuously doing exchange of ideas, researches, and jointly we are organizing conferences and seminars. So on this occasion, I request Professor Ashurani Madam, Honorable Vice Chancellor of this university, to present Guru Vasist Samman to Professor Narendra K. Rustagi sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ashurani ji, and definitely Dr. Lavkush. It has been a pleasure working with you for so many years, and thanks again.
And my apologies, Dr. Lavkush, I was on mute.
Recipient of this Guru Vasist Samman, highly appreciated Samman, after the name of teacher of Ladram. So thank you all and congratulations.
Professor Sahu was saying something.
Sir?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now you can continue. You can invite other speakers.
So Ashurani ji, with your permission, we wanted to have a brief presentation on by Mr. Gonzalez from Development Academy of the Philippines, and Professor Onuro would follow him. So Mr. Gonzalez, please limit your presentation to 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, please start.
He's talking, but
Yeah, we are not able to hear you. You're probably on mute. Mr. Gonzalez, we are not able to hear you.
He's not on mute, I think.
yeah, he's on mute now, I think.
Ricardo, can you ask him to check his audio? If not, we can have him present again later. So Professor Anuro, you may start.
Okay.
And we'll ask him to present again and we can have a discussion after that.
I don't know. I know he's still talking though.
No, no.
Yeah, because we are
send
not
him a
able to-
chat. Send him a chat.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here.
okay, all right. Okay, go ahead. We were not able to hear you. So please, okay, please present now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, all right. So good evening. I am representing the Development Academy of the Philippines, and just a brief background on we call it DAP, DAP. We were established back in 1974, so it's almost 40 years now, more than 40 years now. So the role of the Development Academy of the Philippines is for research. The other one is we have the graduate school where I'm coming from as a senior fellow. So the role of the DAP is to as a training institute for our bureaucrats in the country. So estimated graduates in our graduate school would be more than say from 1974 would be more than 20,000 already. But many of these researches have not been published internationally. And these papers are actually for local applications. But I think many of these researches are of good potential to be published internationally also. So it's good that Dr. Prostagi has invited us to present here, and maybe hopefully this will open up the Development Academy to further some of our researches to be published internationally also. All right, so this paper has been this research has been made way back in 2018 because we have our renewable energy law that was passed in 2008. So 10 years after we wanted to review the law on renewable energy and its implementation in the Philippines. So just very fast, it's just timely that we are all of us, practically all of us in the world, we are moving towards an energy transition. So this is I think the importance of this paper also. Okay, so we made the rounds around the country just to listen to some developers, some local governments, some national government agencies. And this is the profile of the energy sector in the Philippines. So just recently we have some brownouts also, blackouts, outages. Many of our facilities have been more than 20 years old, and some are not so efficient really. But challenge really is that we also have the lengthy and tedious and circuitous process in getting the licenses and permits to set up the RE project. So here, at least 160 clearances are needed and permits just to complete and to start the construction of the project. Here also we have so many objectives. We need to ensure energy security, expand energy access, promote low carbon future, among others. So like all, I think like all of the countries also, we also encounter these kinds of difficulties in the development of renewable energy in the country. So here, for renewable energy sources, we have three major stages of development. We have the pre-development, where we get the licenses and permits, of course, the construction, and of course, while operating these assets. But all of these acronyms here, these are all government agencies. So it's really a long process just to get these projects, RE projects, on the ground. So this is the list. So many of these permits and licenses are being transacted with our local governments and our national government. So imagine, these are the transactions, these are the number of days, so quite complicated. So here, this is the main framework of our study. Back in the 1960s to the 1990s, practically all of our energy assets are owned by the government. Then we have the law in the 1990s that to reform the energy sector. Practically all of our government assets were privatized. Of course, the intention of it is that to become more efficient. But it needed efficient also to be affordable also. But putting these assets into the hands of the private sector also, we have to consider that although the private sector are efficient also, but we have to consider that they have to have profits also. So our energy cost is one of the most expensive here in Southeast Asia. So for the development stages, we have this pre-development, construction, operations, and monitoring and evaluation. So we asked, what is the desired state in this study? So what are we proposing? So we proposed that in the development stages, we propose that the pre-development and the studies should move back to the government in cooperation with the academe. Why the government? Because the government knows the demand of our country, energy demand of our country, and we also know what we have. We know what our resources are. So we propose to the government that the pre-development stages should be made by the government and the academe. And somehow, some of these recommendations were listened to by the government also. So here, this is quite fast. I'm doing here. No? After we have assessed the renewable energy sector way back in 2018, there are new developments. So we have this virtual one-stop shop where the developers can log into a system and then present to them the stages of our pre-development stages of the renewable energy development. Also in 2019, we have the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Law. We also, because of this recommendation, there's a Republic Act, RA Mini Republic Act, establishing the Energy Research and Policy Institute. That was in 2021. So we thought that our paper was listened to also, and the government has responded to it by coming up with a new Republic Act, meaning for us, the Republic Act is coming from our Congress and our Senate. So it has to be signed, approved by, and endorsed the President for a signature. So when we say Republic Act, it is our national law coming from both of our houses, our Congress and our Senate. So this is a screenshot of our virtual one-stop shop to reduce the complications, the process in coming up with renewable. This is online, so we know if the developers know, the government knows at which stage already are the license and permits being obtained. Okay, so this is for the energy efficiency program of the country. Okay, so coming from the framework that we proposed, The Republic Act 11572, establishing the Energy Research and Policy Institute, was signed in July of 2021 to be led by the UP President. UP is the University of the Philippines. This is the premier university in the country. We have the executive director, 5 years term, 7 board members, and it started with around 200 million pesos capitalization. This would only be around $4 million. But I think this is already a good sign that the government's really bent on having our pre-development stages going back to its hands. Okay, so latest in the country, we have a new president, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. He is the son of our former president, also way back in the 1960s to 1970s. So this is the second time that the Marcoses are back in the government already as president. So here right now, the very recent development in the country is that the renewable energy assets can be owned 100% by foreigners also. So because our law states that all developments in the country should be owned by Filipinos, 60%, and at least 60% owned by the Filipinos. But this one, the RRE law states that especially on renewable energy, this cannot be owned and operated by the foreign company. So the major focus on this, because we wanted to expand the utilization of more RE sources, especially because Philippines is an archipelago. We believe that we have a lot of assets on wind, both the onshore and the offshore assets. Okay, so with that, I think I've used up my 5 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Stagi and Dr. Asaho. Also, I've learned a lot from your presentation as well. Okay, so thank you from the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. So with that, we'll continue with the presentation by Professor Ranuro, and he would. So if you can stop sharing, Mr. Gonzalez, that would be great.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, if you want to put it in presentation mode, please go ahead and do that.
Sure. Yes, sir. All right. Good morning and good evening, everyone. And just thank you for the opportunity to present here this morning. As you all know, in writing articles today, we need empirical work. We have applied journals or applied research. So basically what I'm going to do is I will walk you through the process. My name is Emmanuel Anoro. I'm here in the US. So I'll be focusing on applied statistical analysis. So I will touch on simple multiple regression analysis, vector autoregression, cointegration, vector error correction model, standard Granger causality test, and then if we have time, I will touch on on panel data analysis. So again, the emphasis here is on application. I'm not showing you how to derive the methodology, but rather how to apply the methodologies or how to apply our data to solve real economic problems. So that's what I'm going to do. We use eViews. I wanted to use Stata also, but I don't have time to use Stata, but I'll just use eViews. As you all know, there are many statistical packages out there. You have eViews, you have Stata, you use GAUSS, MATLAB, SPSS, SAS. So there are many of them out there. Again, I would just disclaim, even though I'm using eViews, I'm not a representative of eViews. They did not pay me to do this. Rather, I use eViews to do my work, my research. I also use Stata too, but I was not paid and I'm not representing any of them. So we start with a simple regression analysis. So what I will do is I will go through the presentation and then I will do the application. So let me just, we know, although this is elementary, but we know when you're doing a simple regression, you look at the relationship between two variables. In example I have here, that's equation 1. We're looking at the relationship between X and Y. And we know that Y is our dependent, Y is our dependent variable, X is independent variable. In other words, we are trying to explain changes in Y using X. We have assumption when we're applying OLS. So the assumption we make is that the relationship is linear. And then also we know that the error term, we assume that it's a constant over time. And then the multiple regression, what we are doing multiple regression now, instead of only one variable, looking at relationship between two variables, now we include more independent variables. So in equation 2, I have there, now we have X variables, the X variables here. Again, the independent variables, Y is the dependent variable. So the difference between multiple linear regression and simple linear regression, one, we just look at the relationship between X and Y for simple regression. Multiple, we include more variables in that case. All right, next we will talk a little bit about vector autoregression model. This model was proposed by Sims in 1980. So the advantage of VAR is that all variables are treated as endogenous. In other words, there's no need for us to try to find out which one is endogenous or exogenous, because we allow these variables to interact with one another. So sorry, this thing didn't show up here, but here we have X and Y again. That's what this should be X right here. Sorry, one should be X and the other one should be Y. I don't know why it didn't pick it up. So eventually what happens is you let X and Y interact with each other in this case. So you don't have to worry which one is endogenous, which one is exogenous. Okay? And then if we are going to conduct a VAR model, there are some steps that we must follow. I'm saying this because when I review papers for journals, you must at least follow the steps that are necessary. As a matter of fact, I'm reviewing a paper now, which I say reject because the author did not follow the simple, procedures or process to arrive at the answers that he or she presented in the paper. So if you're going to run a VAR, the first thing you do is you must check for unit root, making sure that the variables are stable over time. Then if your variables, if they are stationary, meaning they are you have constant and their variance and means are constant over time, we can use a VAR. So they say level stationary. They are level stationary in that case. I will show you everything when we go to the application. And then also, if you have two variables that are first difference stationary, we can also use a VAR, provided they are not co-integrated. If they are co-integrated, then, in other words, when we say they are co-integrated, they share long-run association, equilibrium association. So then we have to use a vector error correction model. But what is important again, when you are using vector error correction model, the variables in the system, they must have the same order of integration. That means they must be first different stationary. You cannot mix a level stationary variable with a second stationary variable in running a co-integration test. Otherwise, the answer will be wrong. Then next thing we must do also when we're using vector autoregressive model is we have to determine the lag length. I will also show you how to determine lag length. You can use archaic information criteria, final prediction error. There are many of them that we are going to use. All right, next I talked about co-integration. So the example I will show you will be based on Johansen and Jeselius 1990, and also Johansen 1991 co-integration test. So what we're going to test here is that there is a long-run relationship between the variables. If there is long-run association between them, then we can assume that there is evidence of causality running from at least one of the variables to the other. So we can look at the vector recorrection model. It looks like this. Again, we have X and Y. But what is important here is we have the error term, which is the error term is recovered from the co-integrating equation. So causality, we can measure causality using the error term that we recovered from that, and which is, sorry, right here. I don't know whether you see my cursor. That's the error term lag by 1. So causality can emerge from this. So even though if these coefficients here, if they are 0, and we can still infer that there is causality if this is statistically significant, if the error correction term is statistically significant. Yeah. All right, so next I will talk a little bit about standard Granger causality test. Again, this is a standard. We look at the relationship again, whether X causes Y. In this example that I have, X will cause Y if the coefficients here, the sum here, that's summation B. B is the maximum lag here. If we sum the coefficients here, and if they are significant, we use F test to test that joint significance. So if it's significant, then we say X causes Y. And then also in the second equation, we can say Y causes X if, again, the coefficients right here, if you say significant, then Y will cause X. So we can have causality. You can have unidirectional causality running from one variable to the other. And then also we can have bidirectional causality where both variables cause one another. Okay. All right, so for PUD, we use 3 examples. We use PUD ordinary least squares. And then we use a fixed effects model and then random effects models. So there will be 3 I will do. And then when you're running a panel data, it's important for us to decide which one is the appropriate model. So I will also show you how to determine whether I should use PUD ordinary least squares, fixed effects models, or random effect models. So we are going to do all this here. So there are different diagnostic tests that we also show you how to run here, or we're going to run. Brush and Pagan, 1980, Lagrangian multiplier. This will tell us whether we should select PUD OLS or fixed effects model. Which model should we use? So the HO here, null hypothesis, the variances on the across panel members are 0, and then the alternative, the variances against panel members are not 0. So if we reject this null hypothesis, what that tells us is that we should select the fixed effects model in that case. Then we can also compare fixed effects model against random effects model. So to do that, we use a Haussmann test. So Haussmann, 1978, proposed a test. So again, if we reject the null hypothesis here, so that means that fixed effects model should be preferred over random effects model. Okay. So let me, then this is the data we use for panel data. We use data on urbanization, financial development, and economic growth. So for food, I use same data for food and then also for food panel for fixed effects and then for random effects models. So regarding the data that I will use here, I will use data for OLS. We use data from 1971 through 2021. This will be US data. I'll be using data on foreign direct investment, gross domestic savings, capital formation, so economic growth. So, and then for panel data, I have about 10 countries I selected. I will use data. These are some African countries. I will select data from 1965 to 2018. And all the data that we are using in this example, in the examples, they're all taken from the World Bank, World Development Indicators. So you can always go there and download free data. Here are some references. So now what I want to do is, let me go to eViews and let's start applying this. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see it now? Let me go back.
Yeah, we are not seeing your screen, so
Okay.
you may want to share again. Yeah,
Can you see it now?
Yeah, we see it now.
Okay. All right. So this is my eViews software that I use. So what I will do is save the data. So we can simply upload it. Let me show you what the data looks like here. Okay, so this is the data. This is what we have: foreign direct investment. GC stands for government consumption. GCF stands for GCF stands for gross capital formation. GDS, gross domestic savings. GR, economic growth. LR, lending rate. And then I have M2 here, which is broad money supply. So let's start with the simple regression that I mentioned earlier. So if I want to run a simple regression, I will just go to estimate an equation. So let's look at the example. I say simple regression, meaning relationship between two variables. So let's say use economic growth. I'll just say economic growth and then gross domestic savings. So I will simply run this. So I have a result right here. What does this result tell me? When I look at it, it tells me the sample runs from 1971 to 2021. So the number of observations, I have 21 observations. But the important part here is I look at what effect the domestic savings have on economic growth. So I see domestic savings, they have a positive effect. I can look at the p-value right here. I see significant at 1%. So that's very important. So that means if gross domestic savings increase, then our economy will grow, which makes sense to me. But if we look at the arrow squared is low anyway, which means this model explains 13% of the variation in economic growth, which is low. Then another statistic that we report is the F statistic. That's okay. F statistics, which measures the overall quality of the model. That's good. We reject that the coefficients in that model, the coefficients are 0. And another important statistics that we report is that Watson, which here is 1.74. Usually that Watson statistic should be 2. When it's 2, that means there's no autocorrelation. But if it's less than 2, that shows us there's positive autocorrelation. If it's greater than 2, then we have negative autocorrelation. But this is, I don't know, we can round it up to 2, but again, it shows this is not a perfect model. But overall, what we get out of this is, even though R squared is low, adjusted R squared is low, but we still, economically, we know that with the gross domestic savings, when they increase, our GDP will increase. So this model, captures what theory tells us. All right, so this is simple. In other words, the independent variable here is gross domestic savings, dependent variable, economic growth. So now if we run, let's run multiple regression. So if I'm going to run multiple regression, let me add government consumption, and then I add foreign direct investment. So now I have multiple regression. So here is my multiple regression. So now I have more explanatory variables here. I added gross domestic savings, capital formation, foreign direct investment. So when I look at the results, although R squared again is not too high, these variables explain 24% of the changes in economic growth, meaning there are other variables that we are missing. But let's look at gross domestic savings. It's still positive, when you say, at 1% level or less than 1% level. So savings still important. How about government consumption? Where government consumption has a negative effect, but it's marginally significant, only at 10%, as we can see. Then foreign direct investment, although it has a positive effect on economic growth, but it's again marginally significant, only at 10%. So again, now I'll look at my F statistic. F statistic is satisfactory, which means the coefficients are not 0 combined or jointly. So again, it says, the model is satisfactory in this case. The Watson again points to the presence of positive autocorrelation, since again, it's less than 1. There are a number of ways to correct for positive or negative autocorrelation. You can use differences, or you can, changes in the variables or log form to see if you can eliminate that or add more variables too. So these are the simple, I gave you an example of simple regression. We have multiple regression. So the next thing I will go into is the VAR model I mentioned. Now, to run VAR, I mentioned there are a number of steps that we must follow. The first, we must test for unit root. So meaning we want to make sure that we don't have breaks in the data that we are using, or the variables, that they are stable for the period of analysis. So, all right. So what I will do is I will start with this. Let me see if I can run it here. If not, okay. Okay. Oh, that's not what I want. All right. So we go here. We run a unit root test. Come here. Say standard unit root test. Again, as I mentioned, there are a number of tests you can use to test for unit root. I have augmented decay folly. You have modified decay foley. You have Phillips and Perron, KPSS, Elliott and Edinburgh stock. So there are many of them you can use. But for this simple, I will just use modified decay foley test. And then also another thing that we must do is we must choose the lag that we're going to use. We don't have to do it. The program automatically chooses it for us, but we must, there again, a number of options we have. Which one do we want to use to select the lags to run the unit root test? Again, let me use a modify archive information criteria. So let me, for simplicity, add a trend here. Okay, so if I run this, you see the result I have right up here. So this is the test statistics. It's 3.7337,574. But I'm not going to write it out like this. If I'm writing a paper, I'll just simply write negative 3.73. Then I'll look at the critical values. Okay, critical values: 1%, 3.77, 5%, 3.19, 10%, 2.89. So when I look at this, I can tell this variable is stable or is stationary at 10%. Because why did I say 10%? Because 3.733 is greater than 3.19. So it's statistically significant at 5% level. So I can now assume foreign direct investment does not have a unit root. It does not have a unit root, meaning that it is stationary. So I can use it, or we can say it's level stationary. Okay, so I do this one. Please, you remember now, we say foreign direct investment is level stationary. I don't have to, let me do one more and then I will run the VAR for you. Let's look at government consumption. For government consumption, we look at government consumption, see if it's stationary or not. Okay, so when we look at this, well, the program automatically chose 2 lags. Based on maximum lag we gave here is 10, so we chose 2. So we look at this, we see that, well, this is not level stationary, meaning it's not the mean variance, it's not constant over time, not stable. So what must we do to make it stationary? So to make this variable stationary, government consumption, I will go back again and use a first difference. If I click right here, I say first difference, meaning now we're using the first difference, change in the variable, change. So if I run this, okay, now it becomes stationary since I use first difference. So if I'm going to use this variable to run my VAR, then I cannot use the level. I have to use the first difference of the variable because that's what is stationary, the first difference, not the level in that case. All right, so that's how we do unit root tests in eViews and the other statistical packages most of us use. I don't know if anybody has any question, please, you can stop me at any time. You can ask questions. I know. All right, so now let me run my VAR. Let me show you, I want to run a VAR. So it's right here, so vector autoregressive model. So I can only use variables that are stationary. I've already conducted all the unit root tests. So I will use only the ones that are stationary. First, in this example, I will simply use for my VAR, I'll use economic growth, and then foreign direct investment, economic growth and foreign direct investment. So when I do this, Please note here it says lag 2. Why I'm doing this first is I want to select the lag, the appropriate lag length. So I will just run this. When I run this, it gives me this result. So what I want to do is select the lag length. Okay, I go to lag structure here, and then I want to look at the lag length criteria. So if I run this, well, this tells me all the criteria that I have right here. Log ratio, likelihood ratio, final prediction error, archaic information criteria, Schwartz information. This simply tells me in each one, they all selected one lag. So this tells me in my VAR, I should use only one lag, not two. Yeah, I should use one lag. So this is how you select lags for your VAR. So now what I will do is I will go back and run that. So it tells me the appropriate lag is 1, not 2. So that's what I'll do. So I will simply run this. Now I have the appropriate VAR. That remember what I said earlier, the advantage of VAR is you treat all these variables as endogenous, not necessarily exogenous, because you allow them to interact with each other. So with this, we see we lag economic growth. Of course, it doesn't have effect on itself. Sorry, the figures in parentheses are standard errors, bracket at the T ratios of T. All right. But again, foreign direct investment, economic growth does not, the sign is negative, but it's insignificant. So we don't have to worry about that. We don't explain it because it's insignificant. But if I look at the equation for economic growth and then foreign direct investment, I see in this example, foreign direct investment has a negative effect in economic growth. So the T ratio is negative 2.16. So that's how we read that. But then if I look at foreign direct investment, which again is not unexpected, lag of foreign direct investment has a positive effect on itself. So, sorry, does anybody have a question? Okay. All right, so we can look at R squared in here. I don't know. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay, so next example I will do is I will do vector error correction model. Vector error correction model. Again, I will go back to VAR. I will select vector error correction model. So in running vector error correction model, so before we do that, maybe we need to run a co-integration test first, because co-integration test will tell us whether we should use a VAR or vector error correction model. If we find evidence of co-integration, then that tells us that we should use a vector error correction model. But if the variables are not co-integrated, meaning they do not share long-run equilibrium relationship, so what we do is we use a VAR. So let's run a co-integration test here, and then I will to run the. So to run a co-integration test, I will simply come here. I will use gross domestic product and GDS, gross domestic savings and government consumption. So I will look at the relationship between them. So I will run, let's just simply run this and see what we have. Okay, so this tells me, if you look at here, say there is no long-run relationship between the variables what this says is we reject that null hypothesis. So the null hypothesis that there's no long-run relationship between gross domestic savings and government consumption should be rejected at least at 1% level. So the trace statistics is 27.79. And then we also see the critical value is 15.49. So again, the test statistics is greater than the critical value. So we reject the null hypothesis. So usually co-integration gives us two different tests, the trace test, and then it also gives us the maximum eigenvalue test. So usually both of them should give you the same result. In other words, here, this one says one co-integration, one co-integrating equation. This one should also say one. But sometimes you might get conflicting results, but the result from the trace statistics is superior to the one you get from maximum eigenvalue. In other words, if the trace says one co-integration and this says two, a maximum eigenvalue says two, you go with one from the trace statistics. Okay. All right. So next, now, since I've determined that government consumption and gross domestic product, they have long-run equilibrium relationship, meaning they are co-integrated. So next now, I'll say for me to run a vector autoregressive model. So I'll run vector autoregressive model of gross domestic product and government consumption. Again, the lag was 1 that we determined. So we run this equation. So this is a long run vector. This is vector error correction model. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is the vector autoregressive model. So what we do, this is the co-integrating equation. Usually for the way you interpret this, if you're interested in this is the long run equation here. This will be interpreted as negative, positive, even though it's negative, and this will be interpreted as positive, even though it's negative. So that's the sign there. But this is what we do. These are the adjustment mechanisms right here. This is the error term I mentioned earlier, the ZT minus 1 is right here. All right, so we can look at the effect of these coefficients on each other. So it looks like based on this equation, we see change. Remember, D here stands for change in gross domestic product. And then this is a change in government consumption. This is a change in gross domestic savings, okay? So R squared here is not good. All right, let me just stop right here. So we'll not get into pooled regression, but if anybody has any questions, please always, I know it's always boring, but we have to go through this. You know, if you're writing an applied paper, I'm always available. You can always get my number. I help many people. So you can reach out to me. I can walk you through, you know, the process. Thank you all so much for the attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Anuro. Very intense presentation. And what I would want to say is you would have presentations as intense as Professor Anuro showed and is willing to share and collaborate. So if you are interested in that arena, please reach out to him. Let me take you to a lighter paper. This paper I had prepared, and it came from my interest in trying to understand, you know, what was going on with students. So with the students cheating, which is, as one of my friends says, who doesn't? And by that she meant students or non-students. And so with that, we worked on this paper, wherein, as Professor Sahu said, go with the title first. So we, at that time, we didn't have the knowledge that Professor Sahu gave, and it seemed to work out very well. As you would see on ResearchGate, there are 6,700, reads. So that sort of showed, and part of it may have been the COVID thing. So here what we were looking at was simple question. We have something called team leaders. And so we first surveyed team leaders. Their responses didn't add so much sense to us. Again, please mute yourself. Sorry about that. Next time we'll coordinate it better so that we mute everyone to begin with and unmute as we go. So sorry about that. So here we, asked simple questions to team leaders and compared their response to the general students. Can you please unmute this person? Okay, sorry about that. As I said, next time we'll be better prepared to making sure. Thanks. As you muted me as well. Sorry about that. So that was the best way. So thank you very much. So what I wanted to say is that the paper could be as intense as econometrically or statistically as Professor Enuro presented, or you could look at something lighter but of interest, for example, cheating is. And I would be glad to talk if someone is more interested on working something like this. What we had done was just conducted a survey of team leaders and the general student body in 2 classes and made a comparison and made some observation. And to our surprise, we had interesting observations, and that is what the editor of the journal may have liked. They, in fact, I could see from the note on the side that they had written that let's try to complete the review soon and see if we could bring it in the upcoming issue. So that is what I would suggest. Pick something that is of interest to you and that you think is of interest to others. For example, these days cheating, and I think with COVID, it became even more important and everyone started looking at it. So this is time for us to revisit, but if you are, interested, pick this similar topics which are of general interest so that you have more people trying to go and, read your research. So thank you again. With this, I would request Professor Sona Dikshitji to, wrap up by talking about how to make effective presentations. So you may have very good write-up, you may have very good research, but presentation is just as important as you make presentations at the conferences. So with that, I request Professor Sona Dikshitji to take the floor. Professor Sona Dixit. We are not able to hear you if you are speaking, Professor Dixit.
A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, actually, the topic contained pedagogy also, teaching pedagogy also. So I was.
So you may choose display mode if you like, presentation mode.
So I was prompted to discuss on learning through art, and definitely some other time I will be taking up the presentation part, which we had discussed earlier, but I was not briefed about it, so I couldn't go with it. So as a pedagogist, I would like to today talk about learning through art, because whatever be it, teaching is our primary profession, and I would like to discuss some innovations in teaching, where we talk about, first of all, I'd like to quote Mary Cook, who says that creativity is inventing, experimenting, growing, taking risks, breaking rules, making mistakes, and having fun. So how could we go about activities in the classroom? The primary activities that we could take up is poetry, role play, story through drawing, puppets, clay modeling, spin a yarn, storytelling through origami, scrapbook, etc. The other ways are having comic strips or doing theater in the classroom. The other activities could be sharing the concepts through stories, role play, drawing and coloring, craft work, clay modeling, dance. And we could even use different concepts or teaching of different concepts like reducing, reusing, and recycling. That is through art-based activities. Clay modeling is another feature or activity which is very useful at every age, because it even develops your motor skills and you are thinking and developing things, making things by churning the clay. Rangometry, or using or learning geometry by the use of colors by drawing, is another way of art integration. Then we have pattern drawings. These pattern drawings could be used to teach different concepts in the classroom. And mind maps. You know, mind maps are actually the maps that are being made in our mind through our neurons. And these develop different connections between different concepts and help to develop or create a true picture in the mind. So basically discussing what is the aim of having these art integrated activities. The basic aim is that why learn through art? Number one is that it enhances the knowledge of the student in a very, very fun way. It helps in the acquisition of this knowledge and we retain it. And then we are also able to transform it in different situations in life. After all, what is education and what is that learners want in the classroom? They want a curriculum, they want a degree, they want some kind of a job, they're looking for some kind of skilling or entrepreneurship, and there could be some higher order pursuits. And art is one way of providing them, or integration of art is one way in which we can do all these. Let us now go through some evidences where we can see how art is important in life. The purpose of arts education is not to produce more artists, though that is a byproduct. The real purpose of arts education is to create complete human beings capable of leading successful and productive lives in a free society. And that is what is education in the right sense. When teachers offer lessons in natural settings, students may benefit in a number of important ways. Academically, evidence suggests that students retain more after lessons in nature and biology and maths, language arts, social studies, and science than after similar lessons indoors. Lessons in nature may also offer other benefits associated with exposure to trees, gardens, parks, and wildlife, including physical activity, stress relief, and the regeneration of attention. Furthermore, as anthropogenic climate change becomes an increasingly pressing issue, lessons in nature may help build the next generation of environmental stewards. Positive childhood nature experiences which appear to a key role in fostering pro-environmental behavior in adulthood too. We also find that more than 65 distinct positive relationships between the arts and academic and social outcomes are documented. James Catterall and his fellow authors have shown that when we only do academics in the classroom, we also lose something which is very important, and that is potential. Students who have arts-rich experiences in school do better across the board academically, and they also become more active and engaged citizens, voting, volunteering, and generally participating at higher rates than their peers. Research shows improvement in and achievement in language and maths and other core curriculum, attendance rates, motivation and engagement, odds of graduating from college, learning skills and habits of mind, and 21st century skills of creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration, that is, the 4 C's, are well developed. A meta-analysis by Arts Education Partnership revealed that drama courses in particularly help students develop an improved understanding of social relationships and complex emotional issues. Students in dance courses were found to demonstrate a greater capacity for positive self-expression, social tolerance, and self-confidence as well. A 2010 study in Missouri also found an inverse relationship between studying the arts and disciplinary infractions. In The Art of Life, Kim Kaser, professor of psychology and co-author of Common Cause, The Case for Working with Our Cultural Values, sets out the evidence base for the shaping of values and explores the potential of engagement with art and culture to affect our self-acceptance, affiliation and community feeling, as well as values that are known to affect higher levels of personal, social, and ecological well-being, such as freedom, creativity, self-respect, equality, and unity with nature. So, in order to face the extraordinary challenges of living and working in the 21st century, the society needs a new kind of person who thinks intuitively, communicates well, is imaginative and innovative, is flexible, adaptable, and can work in teams. We are moving from the information age to the conceptual age. Pink predicts that artists, designers, storytellers, caregivers, and big picture thinkers only will thrive. John Dewey stressed on learning by doing, Piaget on learning through experience, and Vygotsky on social learning. Howard Gardner gave the concept of multiple intelligences, including music, kinesthetic, visual, spatial, verbal, and linguistic. As we are moving from information age to the conceptual age, we need to focus on creative thinking. We need to devise an educational system capable of training creative thinkers. 13 thinking tools were explored of the world's of the most creative people. A few tools include imagining, observing, forming patterns, abstracting, transform. The field of brain research is having a marked effect on how we learn. David Sosa comments and connects these changing beliefs and discoveries to art integration. And remarkably, art integration generates these conditions. You can see a sample. Let us now visualize art integration. There is a Here you could sense the feeling of calmness through art. You can see the beauty of nature and how we can integrate a poetry through this art integration. Basically, it is music and has been proved that alters the activities of your brain. No wonder Einstein and Leonardo da Vinci were both scientists and artists. Because when we listen to playing, reading, and creating music, every part of the brain is activated. When we hear music, again, our memory centers in the brain are activated. Because the brain has the capacity to change, which an ability is known as neuroplasticity, music also alters the brain's learning capacities, increasing the size of the auditory and motor cortex. So no wonder art integration helps in learning and developing capacities. In the book by Larry Culliford, The Psychology of Spirituality, he writes that activities people might engage in regularly according to preference to further their journey on the path of spiritual growth and development towards maturity, like meditation and prayer, and appreciation of the arts in the same way, and engagement in the creative activities, contemplative reading of literature, poetry, listening to, singing, playing sacred music, all these forms contribute to our spiritual wealth and development. And in another way, we also recognize our original unity and become better humans. Now, in research, how do we use art integration? One very good example of art integration in research is the community-based participatory research, also known as CBPR. Now, in order to collect the views in anonymity and where the responses may let their hearts out to us, and to collect stories, and also for expression without language, we could use several art integrated activities, which are an important part of qualitative research. So, finally, I would like to end with the words of Picasso that every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. Thank you very much for patient listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Swana Dixit. Very interesting presentation. And we would look forward to having another presentation from you on making this presentation. An excellent example of how to make your presentation clear and visually and understandable. So with that, Professor Lavkush, would you want to add? As Professor Lavkush is coming, I can talk a little bit about. Oh, okay.
Sir, thank you very much. And can you highlight some points for the research paper writing
in various reputed international journals, sir, Professor Usigi, sir? You wanted to talk about that?
Yeah.
So go ahead and put your views on that.
Okay. So, I wanted to talk about the organization that Professor Lavkush and I share. That is Professor Anandi Sahu and I, we were the organizers of the first meeting, and then we formed the organization. So we are co-founders of this. And Professor Lavkush Mishra has been a very active participant. And we have been collaborating, as he said, since 2016, holding conferences and journals. So I would like to talk about the 3 journals that we have. And our organization is International Academy of Business, and website is intl-academy.org. And you can email me if you have any questions. So we, as I had stated in my introductory remarks, that the idea of this this webinar or program came with the thought of improving papers for publication in journals in general and in our journals in particular. So we hold our conference annually. This year it would be in October 5 to 7, 23. And we invite you to submit papers. And then we have 4 publications. 1, International Journal of Economics and Business. Then second is American Journal of Information Technology. Third is Journal of Innovative Education Strategies. And then we have International Academy of Business Review. In that, what we publish is papers presented at the conference. So for that, we require, that you present the paper and register. And this year, we are working on getting that published through a publisher, and we are promised that it would be in Scopus. So, and we are working on getting all our journals in Scopus. So with that, we invite you to, submit articles and obviously participate in conference. And with that, I give the floor back to Professor Lavkush.
Thank you,
Professor
sir. Thank you so much. So with these words, if you want to convey anything, otherwise this workshop is over here.
Okay, if there are any questions from Zoom, we would also send a survey, and we would request your honest feedback on what you think worked and more importantly, what you think needs improving and how we can improve it for our next session. We'll probably do next session in all Zoom so that we can see everyone and also do some live surveys in the presentation so that we can get an input, question, answer, etc. In this mode, we are not able, this was way beyond your expectation. And at the last minute, we just decided to do part of it through YouTube channel. So with that, I thank you very much. And if anyone on Zoom wants to say something, please go ahead. Otherwise, we would end the program. Any comments?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, sir. This is Dr. Pramod from Agra University. Actually, I just wants to know one thing. Would you like to focus on the participatory research? Because it is in a very emerging area nowadays. Everybody is looking on it. So would you like have some comments about the participatory research, please?
Yes, please go ahead. Whoever has thoughts on participatory research. Would you like to expand your thoughts more?
Yes, I would like to comment because I mentioned this community-based participatory research, and this is basically where. Yes, sir. Basically, this is where the community participates in the research. So, yeah, it actually deals with the stakeholders and all the members of the community also participates in your research. And they are the actual people whom we are contacting in the form of questionnaires or in the surveys. So, this is where we do it in a qualitative manner. We collect the actual stories, we have rapport establishment with them, and then come out with it. Like if you're having, if you're dealing with in the hospitals, when you go to visit the patients, you talk to the doctors, all this is done in different methods, and they are the actual people who respond. So that is where now we are moving on to community participation in research at the university. The university is actually spreading its wings to different community programs. Like you could have a medical camp, a legal awareness camp, where you should know how you are impacting the society or the community. And this is where we do participatory research, basically.
Thank you. That's very good. Anyone else? If not, I think Lavkushji, we say thank you to everyone. We would follow it up with a survey. Please respond. And that would be our contribution in participatory research field. I would definitely want to follow up on this issue of cheating. And we'll go from there. And please suggest us your thoughts on what you think we could follow this up with. And I'll also follow up with Professor Sona Dikshit regarding this NEP 2020 and how do we look at the issues. For example, I'm passionate about pluralism. So if someone wants to do joint research on it, I would love to collaborate. So with that, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. And unless Professor Lavkush has something more to add, we would end the program now.
My personal thanks to Lavkush Sahab. He's been a real supporter for the International Academy of Business, and we have
Okay, sir.
been
Thank you all.
very warm, pleasant.
All the participants who have joined
Thank you.
us, and we are very thankful to Professor Bhutto Sahab and Professor Anandi Sahuji and Professor Rustagi sir and all other speakers, including Professor Sona Dixit ji. Thank you all for being with us. And as instruction given by Professor Rustagi sir about the next conference and journals. So those who are interested to participate, they are all welcome. And with these words, thank you all once again on behalf of Harvard University as well as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lakushi, you can close the Zoom. Thank you.
I think I can do that also.